Hey everyone, I'm super excited for this next Grow with Glow episode because we sit down with co-author for Chicken Soup for the Soul in Jack Canfield. And when I say we, it's because I have a co-host in Matt Treanor. Now, Matt Treanor played Major League Baseball for over 10 years and has a wealth of knowledge on the topic of performance. He's also insightful, and as you'll see, the dude's hilarious. But again, our guest is Jack Canfield. Jack wrote the book that is only outsold by the Holy Bible. Chicken Soup for the Soul was a phenomenal book, over 500 million copies sold. But he went on to write over 200 copies and other books. He does public speaking on a routine basis, and he's on 4 continents most years sharing his wisdom and knowledge. I'm lucky in that I get to count Jack as a friend and a mentor. I've had Jack come speak multiple times for us at our chiropractic events, and I've also got to go to his home where this interview is located and have conversations. Now, previous conversations, I left Jack's house up in Santa Barbara wishing I had recorded it, thinking I should have brought a camera. And luckily this time we sat down in a formal interview style. But as you'll see really quickly, it's casual. It's comfortable. It's just Jack in his house at ease. And Matt and I really play well off of each other. We're really good friends. But he's also got a great knowledge on the topic of performance and things that people can do. What we are going to talk about are things I didn't actually expect. We're going to talk about ayahuasca, going to Central America and going to healing centers and getting outside the pharmaceutical realm and getting into natural health. We're also going to talk about things like the dangers and health risks of 5G. We're going to talk about the wow experiences, things you can do from a service perspective if you're in business or any kind of service industry, restaurant, hotels. Of course, we'll speak to the entrepreneurs, and as you'll see in this interview, Jack is a big fan of chiropractic care, so we'll share some personal stories there too. We're going to take this kind of all over the map. It's loaded. It's chock full. I'm going to tell you it's probably worth a second listen. The humor breaks it up. Time flies. And at Jack's request, he would like to do this again, and I'll be the first one to say, we got to do it. Jack Canfield, he's incomparable. He's just undeniably brilliant. Comes up with original material, and probably the book we referenced the most in this interview, if you'd like to get it, was Jack's book, The Success Principles. I think it's a manuscript for any entrepreneur, any small business. You have to get it. It's 5-6 pages per chapter. There's 50 chapters-ish in the book. And the only thing it's missing is colorful big photos so that you could flip the page. But outside of that, it is a well-written, phenomenal guide for anybody in business. And it will just give you some basic principles that have a monumental impact in how you make decisions, how you choose to lead, and also keep you out of some trouble. So again, the Success Principles. What he's most notably known for is the Chicken Soup for the Soul, 500 million copies. And I count him as a friend. So insightful. This will be impactful and always fun to bring you these Grow with Glow episodes because I think the person that gets to learn the most is actually me. And for selfish reasons, I get to do a long car ride with Matt Treanor. We laughed all the way up to Santa Barbara and all the way back. In fact, we hired a driver just because we knew we'd want to sit in the back and have a little celebration and high fives. And it was just really, really good stuff. So it is my pleasure to give you both Matt Treanor and Jack Canfield on this episode of Grow with Glow. All right, everybody, we are sitting here today with my favorite author, favorite speaker, and definitely one of my mentors, Jack Canfield. So I appreciate you doing this. We're going to do some intros and give all the accolades at another time. But I just want to say thanks for sitting down with Matt and I and just having a conversation today.
My pleasure.
We just had a real preliminary 5 minutes, just laughing, chatting, good friend, and getting set up here as Jack stepped out of the room, and Matt and I were like, "Oh my God, he's so cool!" Like it's just like wisdom off the cuff and just like life altering stuff. We're going to go through some of the accolades and things you've done, but one of the books that's really been pivotal for what I teach and to chiropractors, as you know, is the Success Principles. Great volumes and many great works that you've done. But just kind of starting with that particular book, what inspired you to write that, and what made you want to put those words onto paper? Because it's really been transformational, not just for me, but a lot of our profession.
Mm-hmm. I realized at some point that I had been extremely successful. Mm-hmm. Chicken Soup for the Soul, me one year I made $6 million in royalties. And I was like, whoa. And my son had a lot of friends, and he said, Dad, my friends don't have houses like we do. And, what makes us different, And I said, well, I live my life by this set of success principles, I call them. And he said, well, what are they? And so I started sharing them with him. And then one day he was like young, I know, 6, 7, sitting in bed with me one Saturday morning, and I'm on my computer and he's on his computer playing a game, and I'm probably surfing the internet. He says, so tell me about those principles again. So I started like just telling him, and then he got bored and I started saying, well, what are all those principles? And I started just listing them. And I had like about, 114 principles that I live my life by. And I thought I should do a book and share these with people. But 114 is too many. I thought I would do like 3 pages per principle, and then I was writing 12 pages, 13, 14 pages, and I realized that there's too many. So I had to combine some and cut some out. And I have about 30 principles that I never even published, the lost principles, Right. But it was my desire to serve, to share with other people how they could be more successful as well. And I had an editor that helped me sell the book, and the rest is history. It's sold millions of copies in 27 languages around the world. And I'm writing a book now called Living the Success Principles, which are all stories of people who read that original book or took a seminar with me, applied the principles, and created extraordinary lives, just ordinary people. So it just was conversation with my son and myself, and then realizing, wow, not everyone does live their life by these principles. I had to let people know about them.
Awesome. Matt and I were talking on the drive up here about his daughter Malia, and he's got twin girls. Just how important it is what we say as parents, but certainly as fathers, in the programming when they're younger. I always say children spell love, Time.
Yep.
It's time with them, and it's quality time, and it's not distracted time, and it's not in between texts. What did you want? Just being focused. And he's been like a phenomenal father with his daughters and his wife, Misty. He's a phenomenal mother, and it's a partnership 50-50 all the way, but just having intentional conversations. When we were going through some of that stuff, at a younger age, how important is it, like you said, 6, 7 years old, what kind of programming and what kind of things are happening for children that can then lead into maybe important things later in life, or even limiting things later in life?
Well, I'm convinced from my work in the area of limiting beliefs that most of our beliefs are formed by the time we're 8. We've decided if we're smart, if we're attractive, if we're athletic, if we're good at math, if we're lovable, etc. And so creating experiences where children feel loved, where they're reinforced for the things they're good at, where their talents are taken seriously. Like the same son was an artist, so let's get him involved in art classes. Let's get him a tutor if he needs it, whatever, because that's what he does. He still paints to this day, although he's also a singer. But the point being that, as you said, I'm just remembering, sometimes I wasn't the perfect father. I remember I was writing an article, and my son comes in to talk to me. I said, could you not bother me now? I'm writing an article. He said, what's it about? I said, how to be a better parent. And I caught myself, and I stopped, But it's like we forget sometimes, And I think the thing also with kids is every child's different. One of my friends says the most unfair thing you can do is to treat every child equally, because they're different. They need different.
We talked about that, right?
Did you? Yeah.
Oh, and so it's almost a question, right? Like, because I wasn't sure. I said, look, I don't know if this is right or wrong. I've got 2 boys, 2 girls, but I kind of treat them all differently. So, that kind of our conversation on the way up.
Definitely, my twins they couldn't be any more different than they are. But it's difficult too, because you want to treat them as individuals, but they're the same age. We don't dress them the same. They don't do anything the same. One has interest in sports and is very aggressive, and the other one, she's not passive, but she's the greatest little sweetheart ever. She's always asking you how you are, come and give you hugs, that type of stuff. So we were talking about that. How do you have to treat them different? If you treat them the same, then what do you want to do? Make them robots? And then you create animosity, I think, between the siblings, and then between the parent and the kids.
And I think one of the things I learned over the years too is that every child needs some time alone with you. Like if you have 2 kids, it's not only, well, let's take the kids out to, you know, Burger King or something, but let's find a way, maybe take this kid to breakfast on a Saturday morning and this kid will take to a baseball game Saturday afternoon, because they need alone time with you. And that's challenging when you have 4 kids, but they need to know I'm special. You know, I had a story in one of my chicken soup books about these children who got together, adult children, when their parents died. And they started talking about like who was mom's favorite. And every one of them thought they were mom's favorite.
Right. When it's done right, that's the way to do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're the favorite. So.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is, if you look at there's a book called The 5 Love Languages, and that, you know, there's quality time, there's nurturing touch, there's words of affirmation, there's gifts, and there's acts of service. And so kids are different in that way. You know, some kids need a lot of verbal validation. Other kids need to be hugged and wrestled with if they're boys and so forth and so on. And other kids need, what'd you bring me, Daddy? You know, when you come home from a trip kind of thing. And to know that not every kid's going to experience your love through the same language, if you will.
Right.
So I think that's an important distinction to make as well.
Yeah. I love it. And one of the topics we've been interested on too is performance. You know, whether Matt playing pro baseball or kids performing at their true passion, at their core. I guess one of the questions I have for you personally is, how do you stay creative? How do you stay juiced up? How do you stay fresh? Because you're coming up on your 80th birthday, written 250 books. The only book that's sold more than Chicken Soup is the Holy Bible. And I've joked on stage and just said, you know, when you do sell more than the Bible, I don't want to be there when the lightning strikes down. It's like, you know, but I mean, just really amazing stuff as far as authors and books. Like, you're at the top of the game, but here we are coming up on your 80th birthday soon, and you're still at the top of your game. So any insight onto your performance, staying creative, staying fresh?
Well, I'm going to just say, given that we're here with an ex-professional baseball player, I don't want to be juiced up. I think that's called illegal.
Ask Jose, right?
Ask Jose. No way, Jose.
But anyway, I think for me, you know, I'm just passionate about what I do. You know, my wife often says, why don't you retire? We got the money. You're 78 years old. And I go, and do what? Right. You know, like if golf was my passion, then maybe retiring would make sense. But it's not. My passion is being in a room with people, watching their eyes light up, watching them have aha experiences, getting emails a month later, like, you know, that they've doubled their income, that they've healed their relationship with their sister, or they've started their business they've always wanted to start. That's what gives me fulfillment, you know? And so as long as I'm doing what I love, then I'm not looking to do anything else. Number 2, I've forgiven everyone in my life for everything. And I've also learned recently, I'm writing a book, part of the book is about this, that there's no one to forgive. If you truly believe that everything that's ever happened to you is for you, not to you,
right,
then who do you have to forgive? You know, my father was abusive and basically violent, and my mother divorced when I was 6. But I developed hypervigilance, which in sports is a good thing to have. You know, you notice everything. And as a trainer, when I'm leading a room with 500 people, I can see 500 people reacting where someone else would miss that this person's starting to cry, because I had to do that to survive. You know, so everything, once you really get that, if you do, then there's no anger left inside of you. There's things I want to see change in the world, racism and people polluting the environment and things like that. But it's out of love for people and love for the planet, not of anger toward the people that are the perpetrators, if you will. Right on. And having been a therapist many years ago, not anymore, having worked with people who were child abusers, who were criminals, etc., they were wounded as children. And their adult behavior was just the outgrowth of their woundedness, if you will. Now, do they still need to perhaps go to prison and pay? Probably. But we also have to have compassion and heal them, so when they come out, they don't just become better criminals because they went to criminal university, which is what I call prisons. That's right. You just learn from each other how to be a better cat.
It's a trade school.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so that I don't have that poison energy in my body, if you will. I meditate every day. I read a lot. I've read over 3,000 books in my life. I had to count them up when I got divorced a number of years ago, 20 years ago. I'd read 3,000 at that point because it was part of the settlement, who gets the books. And I was reading a book a day for years.
Wow.
Took a speed reading course in college, and one of the better decisions I ever made and that anyone can ever make. And I don't know. I sleep well. I get a lot of validation from people. My wife and I love each other. I'm a hugger, so I get a lot of physical nurturing, and I get a lot of validation from people. I drink a lot of water. I take a lot of vitamins. I sleep well. I do yoga. I do qigong exercises. So I think all of that adds up to having energy, and also the creativity part. I think meditation, you've probably heard me tell the story, but I'll tell it for this, is that I didn't have a title for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And we were supposed to go to New York and sell it to some publisher. And so you got to have a title, So Mark Victor Hansen, my co-author, and I decided we both meditate every day for a week and ask for a title. Just sit in meditation for an hour. And on the third day, I saw this hand come out in a visualization with my eyes closed and wrote chicken soup on a chalkboard, like in school. And I have a very irreverent relationship to what I consider a higher power, God. And I said, what the hell does that chicken soup have to do with my book? and what I interpret as God said, when you were sick as a child, your grandmother gave you chicken soup to heal. And I said, but this is not a book about sick people. And the voice said, but people's spirits are sick. This was 1991 and 2. The first Gulf War was happening. Recession was happening. People were losing their jobs. And they're living in resignation and fear. And I went, oh, chicken soup for the spirit. No, chicken soup for the soul. And I got goosebumps, which my friend calls God bumps.
That's right.
And that's how the title came.
That's awesome.
So I put myself in that state regularly. Even, if I have an interview and I get questions in advance, I will sit the night before and I'll look at the questions, go into meditation and say, okay, what answers might come to me and what should I be saying? And then they do.
That's awesome.
So it's available to all of us. Our intuition, we all have an intuition. And most of us don't listen to it. We were trained out of it in school.
That's right. Yeah.
If you did math and you got the answer without, show your work.
Right.
I know, I just knew.
Yeah.
And so we need to get back to that, trusting the inner guidance and then acting on it.
In chiropractic, we call that innate intelligence.
Yeah.
You call it whatever you want, but I just trust that inner voice. It's in there.
Yeah.
It's for good. You mentioned things are working for you. And we had a conversation off camera about Wayne Dyer. And I had an opportunity to spend some time with him in Maui. And he used to say, it's not in your way, it's on your way.
Yeah, I love, there's a book titled, What's in the Way is the Way. It's a very similar statement,
It's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Exactly.
There's a lesson here. What do we need to do?
Exactly.
And just talking about coming from that place of love, if people have never meditated, check it out. I'm a big fan of Joe Dispenza.
I love Joe Dispenza's work.
He's a good friend. And just 4 o'clock in the morning, the third eye is usually open for most people. If you're on a traditional time, it's a great time to meditate. And you just open and then answers come to you. It's not that you've got to press it or push it. It's actually about just stopping, right, and just opening it up.
I'm kind of like who was the guy that the singer, tropical?
Bob Marley?
No, it's five. It's got to be 5 o'clock sometime.
Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah. That's my contribution today.
So I'm a night guy. I'm a night owl. So for me, it's got to be 4 o'clock somewhere.
Right. For meditation.
So I meditate usually around 7 in the morning. Yeah, but it still works.
Oh, it's awesome. But just even having that ability to open it up and just see what comes through, I think is huge for people to just trust that intuition, trust innate, and then just follow where it goes. But you're right. A lot of people kind of get snuffed out. You and I were talking about this, Matt, a couple days ago about how kind of where education is today or where the world is today. And I know we had some conversations around this, just kind of how maybe kids are raised differently today than we were, or some of the similarities maybe is that don't trust the intuition or don't trust what you hear. You had some questions on that. What was that?
I just was wondering, is it just me getting older and now I'm that guy? You guys aren't the same as when I grew up. And my main concern is my kids when they're getting into their teen years and a little bit older. And I've seen such a drastic change, not just from when you started writing in the early 90s, but literally in the last 5-10 years, and the way people have kind of gravitated towards this social media stuff and how it's forming their mentality towards what they get and their news. You know, a lot of information is not exactly perfect on these sites and stuff like that. And so people are starting to trust all this. But I was thinking, you know, is it just me being that old guy, or are things really going in that direction where there's a lot of unhappy people and that have lost that side of what true love is, like a mother's love or a love? Like, this guy helped me out of some really dark spaces when I was coming out of concussion stuff. And a lot of it had to do with the chiropractic. And then he realized that's what gravitated me towards him, is he saw me as a human and I was hurting. And so he took what he does as work, and then he did his research and then applied both of them. But so I have love for this guy as like a brother. And so that I see that lacking throughout our societies, interactions with young people with older people, the way we talk to each other, the way we treat each other on the road. I mean, it's really, it's disheartening to me, because when I was in 1920, I had this communal feeling. I want to be part of a communal life where everybody's just happy and sharing and all that stuff. But when you get down to real life, it's hard to just take and not give. There's both, right? You got to work for the money, that type of stuff. So I just see right now, I feel hurt inside in a way. I feel nervous for my kids if something were to happen to me and they're stuck in this dark place that at least I feel like we're in right now, where there's that lack of love and consideration for their fellow man.
Sure. How old are your kids?
I have twins that just turned 5, and then I have an 8-year-old, all girls.
No, I think all those concerns are very, very valid. There's just tons of research on the negative impact of social media, cell phones, iPads, all that stuff with kids. I saw a very telling picture that someone showed me about a month ago, showed about 15 kids all sitting in front of their lockers looking at their phones, and the caption was recess. And like, nobody's talking to each other. I mean, they're talking to somebody.
Well, they're probably texting each other and they're 3 feet away.
Some of that. But the point is that with the pandemic, which has exacerbated it, the rate of suicides among teens is up. Suicide ideation is up. I have a friend who works in the emergency rooms, and there's research on this, that every time a teenager comes into an emergency room, they now have to ask them, have you had suicidal ideation? Even if they're there for a broken arm. And the number of kids saying yes is it's off the charts. And so people aren't relating to each other. The social skills aren't built there as much. Teachers are reporting kids in school are unruly. We have the highest level of teacher resignations we've ever had in the nation. They're hiring all kinds of people to come in and teach just to have bodies in the classroom. We have the incivility that goes on, people not treating each other with courtesy and respect. We have this incredible political divide in America that's going on right now, and we're modeling to our children, not me necessarily or you, but the adults that are in that space, of attacking, not listening to each other. You know, and then you've got Fox and CNN and MSNBC totally. You go off into your camp, and you're just being reinforced on your beliefs. So we don't have people sharing their points of view, so people see the whole, and it's very destructive. So, and then drugs are more readily available. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are not great. However, I think during the pandemic, and we're starting to be aware of it. People like you are having these conversations now, and parents are beginning to say, I'm not sure this is the best thing. What can we do? And, you know, people are being more intelligent about limiting screen time, for example, and not giving a 7-year-old an iPad as a way of like avoiding having to interact with them, which is what parents do often because they want to go watch their
electronic babysitter.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we're becoming aware, and if we go back to everything's happening to us, not everything's happening for us, not to us, the pandemic, as much as it was a huge disaster for a lot of people and institutions, woke us up to something. Many of us are not happy with our jobs. We're not happy with our partners. We're stuck with them all day at home.
Yeah.
We're not happy with the commutes we were making. We want to spend more time with the children, which we got to experience sometimes with the pandemic. So I think that whatever's going on evolutionarily right now with technology is probably has some benefit if we are aware of it and respond to it appropriately. One of the things that a friend of mine who's a certified genius, I think his IQ is like 165 or something really high, said up until technology, evolution happened at a rate where animals and people could cope with it. Like as lions got faster, gazelles got faster. So that otherwise, if the lions got faster and the gazelles didn't, there'd be no more gazelles left in Africa.
Right.
But technology is evolving so fast, we can't adapt to it as fast as it's evolving. And you see these TV documentaries like Social Network and things like that, seeing the tremendous. Just yesterday, my wife went to a store in Santa Barbara, and this morning on top of her news feed was an advertisement from that store. And they follow you around.
It's crazy.
You
right?
can send a private text to someone in Austin, Texas, saying, I'm thinking about moving to Austin, and you'll start to get ads on your cell phone for real estate agents in Austin.
We did that on a fly fishing trip in Montana. A group of us, 4 guys got together. We were talking about it, and guys, hey, we should get 20 acres and do something nice. Next thing you know, guys on their emails, they're getting this. It's really odd. And we may have gone to a store and picked up a magazine. Definitely not from there, but getting those messages. But it's a weird feeling too to know that somebody is, even if it's a computer, they're following you and they're keeping a track of what you like and what you don't like, and gearing it so that you can interact with that screen more often. And somebody had said a while back, it takes your brain 60 seconds from meta to beta or something like that, where you're now part of that trance. You're now so engrossed into what you're watching that everything around you. And you see this with your kids, I guess, when they're on their phone or doing whatever, you can call their name, you can say fire in the house, and they're still locked into what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
I go onto my wife's computer right before Christmas, and I just hover over and click over all the things I want for Christmas, and then they magically show up. So I found a way to use it for good. That's a benefit. I just go on her computer and all that stuff right on her feed. But just that algorithm stuff, like everything's being tracked and measured, I think it kind of goes to your point of what some psychologists would call confirmation bias.
Yes.
So you're going to be in this pond of thought in people, and political is a great example, only getting reinforced on the things you already believe, and always being told that how you think is the right way, which then means there's a wrong way. And so a confirmation bias is you're only getting feedback that says the way you think is right, and don't be challenged, and don't be open, and the way you pray is better than how they pray. And all of a sudden it's an us versus them, and it's very divisive. And then you get into the biochemistry, I think, of phones and screen time, which is dopamine.
Yes.
Right. In that instant gratification. It is addictive. It's that instant hit, that instant gratification. And where we might get antsy after 14, 15 minutes when a TV commercial was going to be scheduled, because that's the generation we grew up in. Now it's not even 14, 15 seconds, because that's the time to scroll or see something new. So the attention span's getting shorter and shorter.
Well, watch a music video, and every 2 to 7 seconds, it shifts, it changes, the image changes, or the kids will go away.
Right.
Right. So our attention spans are not long enough to have really deep, meaningful conversations, for one thing. And in interpersonal communication, like with your daughter, your spouse, your son, whatever, there are places where it's boring for a minute. You don't know where to go next. So if you just go, well, this is boring, I'm going to turn on my cell phone, you never get to the deeper place you need to go in human interaction and conversation. Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, talks about this term I love, digital detox, where you just for 1 week decide you're not going to watch TV, you're not going to look at your cell phone, you just literally escape it.
Yeah.
And I've heard people go on these like barefoot cruises, where they can't bring their phone, or they go to an ashram for a week of meditation. And they go like, oh my God, I didn't know how addicted I was. I'm so much calmer now. I don't have all that negative energy coming into me on a constant basis. And I had an experience not too long ago where I started to realize when I was holding my cell phone in my left hand started to tingle. So all that energy of the radiation coming out of that hand, into my hand, is having a physical effect on my body. Yeah. And now with 5G, which is even worse in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
Because we can't, it's too much energy coming in.
Yeah. Well, there's many reasons why I love you, but 5G is not good for people. I'm gonna just say that for the record. But when you talk about your work and the things you do, like Jack gets that twinkle in his eye, right? Like you light up. But even these topics, like we can jump different topics, and you're on it. You're in it. What are some of the things you're working on right now? Because I'm always curious, like, what did you write this morning, or what was the conversation yesterday? Because, I mean, you're like, I made a mistake one time at a health talk. I was talking to an elderly population. I said, I want to make you younger and think healthier, and I want to euthanize you. It's not what I'm trying to do here. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But you have like this fountain of youth you just seem to be tapped into. So what are you working on that keeps you like this spry and this lively, and like you're with it on every topic?
Well, I'm running about 4 different mastermind groups that meet every week for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So watching those people evolve and being able to respond to their needs is very fulfilling for me. I watch probably a TED Talk every other day. I watch YouTube. The only channels I have on my Sirius XM radio are the comedy channels.
Right on.
So whenever I'm in my car, I'm laughing. We know the value of laughter and what that does to the biochemistry in the body. So that's a good thing. But as far as writing goes, and focusing on, I'm developing a course on spirituality. It's something, when I wrote the Success Principles, I said, I don't want to teach about success anymore. I'm done. But I didn't realize when you write a book, that's all people want you to talk about for the next 20 years, because that's what they know you for. But I'm writing a book, not going to say the title because I really don't want it to get stolen, but it's about love versus fear is really the general focus of it, and how much our society is afraid. We're afraid of each other. We're afraid of everything, war, pestilence, global warming, etc. Things we need to be concerned about, we do address. But so I'm focusing on that, which is really, I think, an important issue. I'm writing the Living the Success Principles book I told you about. I'm writing a book called The Power of Wow. The idea, how do you provide wow experiences for your clients? Have you heard of a baseball team called the Savannah Bananas?
Yeah, they do some crazy stuff on the field, I think
They do. So this guy buys this little, I don't know, they call it Coastal League or something.
Right.
Team. And it's floundering. They're not selling tickets. Nobody's coming. So he comes and he says, okay, he's going to let the community decide what to call the team. Like make suggestions. And Savannah Bananas one. He comes dressed in a yellow suit, and the team, like on maybe between the first and third innings or something like that, somewhere the whole team comes out and starts doing Thriller, the dance. They put water slides on the 7th inning stretch, and people come out and they slide on the water, and whoever goes the farthest wins. And it's just fun.
Right.
And they have a banana marathon. Everyone dressed up like bananas, and they run a 10K race, and they sponsor that. Oh, that's cool. And he brought a joy to it and fun. So how can we create more wow experiences for our clients? For example, just in a chiropractic office, you can start thinking about, how can I create more wow experiences? I read about this one chiropractor once who literally his waiting room was like a living room in your home. And there's hot tea, and there's coffee, and there's all kinds of things like that. When the kids come in, there's a million things to play with. And some of those don't sound that unique. But even, and I don't know if chiropractors should be giving away alcohol, but the point is, on your birthday, he knows what your favorite wine is or whatever, and he sends it to you and stuff. So they keep going, wow. Right. Ritz-Carlton story, interviewed the head of Ritz-Carlton, the culture, kid leaves his pet stuffed giraffe at the Grand Cayman hotel, and he gets to the airport, and it's an inconsolable 3-year-old, oh. And so they call the hotel, they find it, but it's too late to get it to the airport. So they said, we talked to your giraffe, and he said he just wanted to stay for a few more days, and he was things he wanted to do. So they took pictures of him golfing in the spa with cucumbers over his eyes, at dinner, getting a massage, etc. And then he put it in a leather-bound scrapbook and sent it to the family.
Oh, wow.
And where do you think they go on vacation every year?
Right.
Because it's a wow experience, right?
Totally.
So I'm working on that book, which I'm excited about because I love creating wow experiences as well.
You were talking about love versus fear too. you know, and that energy of love and just having that driving force. We had Matt come and speak 4 or 5 years ago to a group of chiropractors. I was hosting a seminar. We were doing a lot of work with concussion, and he was kind of the poster child. He had taken some hits at home plate. Since those hits, Major League Baseball shortly after changed some of the rules of running into a catcher, and you know, because they're exposed and people getting hit. And then we saw rule changes in soccer, no head balls, 12 and under. From when a goalie would punt the ball, it's traveling at 70 miles an hour. Kids would head it at a young age, and the neck muscles couldn't hold it. And so AYSO soccer changed rules, Major League Baseball, the NFL is really well documented with the things they're doing. So just kind of looking at that. And so we had Matt come and speak, which as an ex-major leaguer for 10 years, he played for a few different teams. So everybody in the audience kind of knew one of the teams he played for. He took photos with everybody in that jersey. So if they were from Kansas City, he had Kansas City. If it was Florida, he had Florida. Yeah, finished his career with the Dodgers. But then the next day, we had a stack of photos of him, like basically throwing somebody out at second base or hitting a home run. And he personalized each photo to each doctor in the room. Do you remember doing that?
I do.
So he sat there in a suit for like 4 hours with a list of names. Who's here? Give me photos. I want everybody to go home with one. And he personalized it. Dear Dr. So-and-so, thanks for your help. Dear Dr. So-and-so, thanks for the adjustment. And whatever it was. But it was just one of those things like, we still have people from 5 years ago that still talk about that. You know, it's like, hey, I'm going to go interview Jack today with Matt. And they're like, oh man, tell Matt I definitely said hello. Like they think that he actually remembered every name on the paper. You know, it's like,
I remember faces better than names.
Me too.
Talk about what an imprint that has, though. Like why the wow experience is worth it.
Well, and think of the opposite of that, the new Bob Dylan scandal, where they said everyone was going to get a signed book, but it was signed by a machine. Right. You know, and you know, just that little shortcut kind of ruined his reputation for a while.
Well, you did that for us also. So that was a couple years ago. We had the success principles, and you personalized them. And what I loved is I went to your room that night to either drop off books or pick some up. And you were in the middle of signing them, and you signed them, and you put the date on the book. And then every chiropractor that came into the seminar was handed a personalized book with you. And then when you were done, we had to get you to the airport, but you took the time to take a photo with everybody. So I'm just, for the listeners here, I'm kind of sitting with 2 people that live it, which I appreciate, because those experiences, I think, are really things that kind of create some of that stickiness, create some of that lasting meaning for people. How do you do that in your work going forwards, where you kind of have that energy? And we talk a lot about performance and longevity. And then even for younger chiropractors or younger listeners in business, I think there's maybe a move away from that personalizing, and everything is mass and in bulk. And, you know, I just think that the little extra touch really makes a difference.
Well, I'm a big proponent and what do I want to say, client of chiropractors. I've worked with a lot of different chiropractors in my life because of a lot of different places, and some of them retire and die and whatever. But I remember this one practice, the guy had 12 treatment rooms. He'd come in, you'd get like 3 seconds of whatever, and he'd go to the next room and, you know, lie here for 5 seconds or 5 minutes while that integrates, and then you're out. You know, it's like, well, what was that? Versus the guy who comes in and asks you about your kids, and are you still taking, you know, my chiropractor is nutritionally very intelligent, so he gives me a lot of nutritional supplements to take, and he'll ask me, are they working? And when I had COVID, which I tried not to get, but I did get last July, you know, he asked me what was going on, and he gave me this thing called Busolve, which helps deal with the stuff in the chest, because I had a little bit of chest stuff going on. I like that guy.
Hey, everyone, check out in the show notes our link for blenders. These are eyewear glasses that will protect you from UV light that's damaging to your eyes. And on this particular episode, we're teaming up and doing a collab with pro beach volleyball player Gina Urango. You see, I'm on my way to the Paris Olympics to take care of some athletes and some amateur athletes, and I love to help people along the way. So this particular episode, check out the show notes if you want some sunglasses for the beach. The best that are out there, blenders, and the benefits are going to go to pro beach volleyball player that we've previously interviewed right here on Grow with Glow, Gina Urango. Check out the show notes, get your glasses, and if you want to be like Prime Time, wear your blenders.
I think, again, those are wow experiences, you know, that are important. So spending time with making people feel special. Everyone wants to feel special. Everyone wants to be appreciated. I used to tell people, imagine everyone you meet has a tattoo on their head that says, appreciate me, make me feel special. And one of my favorite chicken soup stories was about this professor at this I think it was Cornell, and it was a midterm test, and he said, "This next question is worth 50% of your grade. What's the name of the janitor in this building?"
Right.
Nobody knew. Guess what was happening the next day? They're all going up to the janitor. Right. "Hey, what's your name? How are you? Do you have kids? Whatever." Because we treat everyone like they're just functionaries in the background to serve us, instead of like really connecting with people. So I think all that's really important.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to go to the ballpark one time with Matt. I think it was one of the first times you went back to a baseball professional stadium when you weren't playing, and it was actually Texas Rangers were in town playing the Angels. He played for the Texas Rangers in 2 World Series, and just the front office people were down, "Hey Matt, what's going on? Hey, how's it going?" And they said, "He's a clubhouse guy." And I played lacrosse in college. Wasn't familiar with that term in baseball, and they said it just means everybody in the clubhouse like Matt Treanor. And I was standing there with you. Who's the GM for the Rangers?
John Daniels.
John Daniels said, "I'll offer you a job anytime you want it in the front office," because people just vibe. So I think there's a lot to be said for that, right? Like if you make other people feel special, you build them up and you do those things. There's those intangibles. It's not just the content you write in a book or a thing I might say at a seminar or even the adjustment for a chiropractor. It's the intangibles that I think you bring. And maybe that's kind of getting lost in some of the cell phone stuff and some of the technology too, is just, making people feel special. And who you had to hunker down with in your foxhole during COVID, was this a really good idea or a really bad idea? Because now we're sitting here with people. So I think that's important for anybody who's in service. Right? Yeah. How do you do the extra thing? The idea of a scrapbook of a stuffed animal, playing golf and in the spa, like that's super cool. And of course, you've earned their loyalty forever. You know? That's huge.
There's another story where this girl was walking around one of the properties at the Ritz-Carlton. She was crying, a little 12-year-old. And this one of the women that was on staff went up to her and said, "You look very sad all the time. Why?" "My pet goldfish died." "Oh, what was his name?" "Danny." "Oh." So they go out. The family goes out to the beach or wherever they go for half of the day. They should come back, and there's a goldfish in the room in a bowl. And it says, "Hi, I'm sorry that my good friend Danny died, but I'm actually his cousin. My name's Freddie. You can't take me home with you. However, I'm going to be your companion for the rest of your time here." Right. And the girl stopped being sad.
Right.
Now, what's that worth?
Right.
And what did it take? Just took someone to take, maybe $100, a little bit of time, go to the pet store, get the fish. But that's the way it works when you care. Yeah. And people want to feel like they matter.
And of service, I think that's huge, is remembering names, greeting people, extended family, spouses, asking about them. I think that stuff makes a huge difference. I kind of want to shift a little bit and talk about travel.
Sure.
I know you've been some really cool places. Last time you and I were together, you were about to go to India.
Yeah.
I didn't get any updates. I don't know where this is going to go. But what are some of the coolest places you've been and maybe some of the coolest experiences? But at the time, you were about to go to India. Yeah. And it was something around health and healing. And it was just one of those things like...
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there was a doctor named Dr. Pankaj Naram. He was a doctor to Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, Ayurvedic doctor. And a delightful guy, just delightful. And a backstory for him is he knew this one guy who was an amazing healer. And he went to him and he said, "I would like to follow you for a year. I want to live in your house. I want to watch you interact with every patient. I want to eat what you eat, drink what you drink. And I'm going to ask you questions all day long. Would you be willing to do that?" And the guy realized what a devotee he was willing to be. And he said yes. And he learned to be an amazing Ayurvedic doctor. And he would come to the United States once or twice a year and see people. And he would take pulses. He did your pulse. And first time he took my pulse, he's just feeling the pulse. He says, "Was your mother an alcoholic?" And I went, "You could tell that from my pulse?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Jesus, okay, that's amazing." Right. So anyway, one time we were in Philadelphia and he was there, so I went to see him. And he said, "If you need to cleanse." And I said, "I probably agree with you." He said, "If you come to India to my clinic for 1 month, I'll give you 17 years of extra life." And I said, "Whoa, that's a pretty good investment. One month for 17 years." So my wife and I went, and we lived in the clinic for the first week. It was colonics and massages and steam baths and all kinds of things to clean the body out. And then for 3 weeks we lived actually next door to him. He had an apartment building that he put people in. And it was an amazing experience. I came back, I lost a lot of weight. My blood pressure went way down. And everyone said, well, you look much better, so it was great. And then I've been to India before. I love the Taj Mahal. That's an amazing experience if you ever get a chance to. It looks like a paperweight when you see it on the picture. It is huge.
Right.
And it's so interesting. There's so many fascinating things about it. For example, there's 4 pillars on either corner. They all angle out about 2 degrees. So if there's ever an earthquake, they'll fall away from the central building instead of crashing in on it.
Oh, wow.
Million little things like that you never realize,
Holy India. I've actually been there. I've been to Mumbai. And we took our kids. We did a giving trip in Mumbai. We gave these children school uniforms. And if they didn't have them,
sweet.
Just really, really cool stuff came out of it. But it's a different place. And I think for anybody listening, when you talk about, colonics and cleanses, you got to realize that over half of your immune system is in your gut.
Right.
So if you're cleaning your gut, you're taking care of your internals, you're doing things like steams and careful what you eat, like that is your immune system. And I just, the health side of me through COVID, I don't feel like there's enough talk about what we could do. There's a lot of talk about fear versus love. The fear is COVID, but how do you love your body? And to me, it was kind of like, all right, what's the force for good here? Not the thing we're trying to avoid. So for anybody listening, I think makes perfect sense to invest a month and get 17 years.
You probably know the numbers on this, but I heard this just recently that the brain has so many nerves and the heart has so many nerves and the gut has like about 20 times more or some ridiculous.
Three brains.
3 was equal to 3 brains.
That's right.
Yeah, that's amazing when you think about that. And none of us ever learned that in school.
No, and even like from a communication perspective, I'll teach chiropractors, hey, listen to how people describe things. Because a lot of times like, well, I just felt in my heart this was the right thing to do, or I knew it in my gut. Mm-hmm. And those are my big Texans, right? It's like, I knew it in my gut. And so they speak from the brain that they resonate with the most. Mm-hmm. And they've even done studies with like heart cells that are independent of brain cells. So you can have a cognitive recollection of an experience, but you can also have a heart recollection. And if someone's been through a traumatic event and they're trying to heal, you need to heal both. The cognitive brain, but also the cellular level, because there's so many neurons.
Concept of a broken heart, it's real. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because that's huge in communication. If you're really listening, kind of go back on that service standpoint of where do people come from and where can I help them? Are they speaking from their heart? Are they speaking from their gut? And if they make mention of those things, then it would benefit you to build trust and to also let them know you're listening, because I think anything in health, it's not about being interesting. It's about being interested. Yeah. I'm interested in you and how can I be of service to you? And if they're speaking from one of those 3 hearts, then you should try to speak to that because you got a better chance of helping them out, having a breakthrough, making some kind of change in what's going on.
So connecting on the same level. That's good.
Yeah. Like but the neurons, the amount of fibers that interconnected the heart, interconnected the gut and the brain, it's basically 3 different brain masses within the body, and people kind of speak through that. We talked a lot about this with concussion. What was one of the side effects you had when you would eat heavy meals?
Right. Well, you were talking about how fast I probably ate, and I took notice about that, but my gut was always bad. And when I was 18, I lived on my own and I wasn't taking care of myself, and I ended up having a bunch of GI issues and all that stuff. Never diagnosed. It was supposedly a bleeding ulcer with a spastic colon. So I'm pushing all this acid and stuff. And so from then I didn't know anything about the body and health and all that stuff. So I constantly was trying to figure out what was going to be the best for me. But with the concussion stuff, immediately reverting back to that loose bowel and all the crazy stuff that goes with it. And that was just the physical. And now my brain was going into that dark space, what's happening to me, my thought, and all this different stuff was happening. But I noticed that when I am good down in my gut, everything feels good. Yeah. I'm sharper, everything's what's the result of that? That's the result of taking better care of myself, eating better, good exercise, taking those moments where I could get elevated emotionally and really put myself back in check and keeping it, even keel, as opposed to working myself up and getting so worked up that I make myself sick in essence. And
those things are all connected. So within 3 hours of a concussion, people develop leaky gut. And
really?
Yeah. So then and that's the first connection in embryology is brain to gut. That's the first connection made. Makes sense. Very primal, very primitive, but also understanding that if someone's got a brain injury and it affects the gut, then there could be health things that people can do. Are you familiar? Have you done anything with intermittent fasting at all?
Yeah.
How do you feel after you fast?
I've done all kinds of fasting. I've done intermittent fasting. I did a 17-day vegetable juice fast once. I did a 12-day water fast. I've done 2-day weekend fasts and then followed up by Shake Meal Shake program for a month, lost 30 pounds. So great.
Yeah. So, and I know you're way into your health, but I want people to hear that from you too. It's just like your knowledge isn't just the books you write. I mean, it's like you live it, you experience it. You went to India to add 17 years to your life. Like that's really cool stuff, how much you invest in yourself. But also understanding that a lot of times when people fast and different versions, intermittent fasting, water fast, juice, there's many different ways to do it. And I'm not advocating for one or making another wrong. It's just, the point is once you do that, a lot of times there's more mental clarity.
Oh yeah, no question. I find that when I fast, there's about 3 to 4 days of like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I want something to chew on. I like crunchy things, and I also know I get a little brain fog and antsiness. And then the biggest challenge is now it's like, dinner is like 6 to 8. You're preparing it, you're eating it, you're cleaning up after it. Now you got 2 hours with nothing to do. What do you do? So now that uncomfortable feeling comes in. And then you're detoxing from the sugar that you might have been eating, the wheat you might have been eating, all that stuff. And then after that, about the 3rd or 4th day, the hunger pangs go away, is my experience. And also, the brain clarity is ridiculous. And also, I need less sleep.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Those are really common byproducts of people doing that. So for anybody listening, consider it, and then read up on it and work with a doc that'll help you. But it's funny because we can talk about fasting and your experiences and how it helps your brain. And maybe that's part of your productivity is the cognitive side. And then we look at Matt where he had a number of injuries and just to be totally fair, was being given prescriptions and pills and drugs and just symptoms. They were just trying to put down the symptoms,
right.
And how that really tied back into the gut. So, the brain to gut or gut to brain, that's the first connection in embryology. I think a lot of people are trying to find some solutions, have a force for love. What can I do to help myself? And for me, one of the things was what I'm not going to do is just eat 1 day a week. Just going to water fast, and the amount of clarity and energy that comes. So I want to suggest that for some people listening. And I don't have a dog in the fight. It's just one of those things I want to expose people to some different concepts.
Well, and intermittent fasting is not that challenging either because you just stop eating for a certain time and you don't eat for 12 hours, something like that. Yep. And then you still get to eat. Yeah. So it's like it's not as challenging as like I remember the first time I did that 17-day fast, the one thing that's important too, the word breakfast means break the fast. And I didn't do it right the first time. I think I had a turkey sandwich or something terrible like that instead of like fruit.
When you break the fast, which is breakfast, break fast. When you break the fast, because usually you sleep at night, something light, fruit, something easy on the
lighter,
gut.
Yeah, exactly.
I would tell you too, a lot of people who have skin issues. The skin is the biggest organ of the body. The liver is the biggest one in the body, but straight celery juice in the morning and do nothing else. Don't put it with ice, just straight celery juice and wait 30 minutes.
We've been doing that lately.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, we got into Anthony Williams, the medical medium guy. And so we've been doing the celery juice thing. It's great. It's we got a lot of celery in our refrigerator.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
We're doing it for 4 people. It takes a lot of celery.
It does. Questions, Matt, as we start wrapping this thing up for Jack. What are some things you wanted to ask him? Anything goes. Doesn't have to be the topics we were talking about.
Oh, man. I personally wanted to ask you about your biggest challenges growing up. I heard a few that possibly could be. I didn't want to get too personal or any of that. But
you can get personal.
So to me, when I was kind of looking over some stuff on you, I was like, well, this guy goes to Harvard at 18. And so I didn't know anything about that earlier section of your life. And I was like, that seems to be pretty successful leading up to that Harvard time. But everybody has challenges, regardless of, I've learned this over the years. Something small to you might be something extraordinary to somebody else. So I just was wondering from where you came from, what was the biggest struggle? And then that course that you took when you turned 18 and why you did what you did.
Well, what happened for me, my dad, as I mentioned, we were talking earlier on, it was before we came on air or afterwards, but it was a drunk at night, and he often turned violent. I can remember him holding a .45 pistol at me. I can remember him in a doorway with a big knife. He was a Air Force lieutenant, trained bomber pilots, so he had all that accoutrement with him. And we used to have a radio. If you remember radios back in the 50s, which is when I was about that age, there was they were big things that looked like a piece of furniture, and there's just the top part was the radio, and the bottom part was usually empty. So when my dad would drink, I would literally get in the radio and pull it toward the wall and hope he wouldn't find me, because when he did, I would get sometimes. It wasn't like, beaten up like he would sock me in the chest, or the chin or something, but belts and things like that. So my mother divorced him when I was 6, thank God. But then I was, living in my grandmother's attic for a couple of years until she married my stepfather. And then my mother and my stepfather drank way too much. So I had a lot of fighting going on in my family, and you're always sitting on the steps. Are they going to break up? Where am I going to be if that happens? And they're throwing dishes at each other and things like that. I was fortunate. When I was in the 5th grade, my aunt, my mother's aunt, had made a lot of money during World War II. They had a foundry where they made parts of weapons and things. And so we were poor. My dad made $8,000 a year when I was growing up, my stepfather. And my aunt had a son named Jack who died went to Virginia Military Institute, and coming home in an automobile accident, he got killed. And so she adopted me kind of, in her stead. I didn't live there, but I would go there for Thanksgiving and Christmas and things. And so she sent me to this in-town private military school called Lindsley Military Institute. So I got a good education. West Virginia was not a great place to get an education. It was 48th out of 48 states, worse than Alabama and Mississippi. And so what happens is, because I got that good education, I got appointments to West Point, Annapolis. I got into Harvard, Yale, and Brown for applications. I had a Latin teacher who said, you should apply to those places. I was going to apply to West Virginia University. It's a good university. But sure. I said, are you kidding me? I can't get into those places. She said, yes, you can. And I did. So this is a weird part. Why did I choose Harvard over Yale and Brown? There were 52 women's colleges within 100 miles.
My man.
You're smart beyond your years. That's right. I told you he was cool.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of dating, and I majored in Chinese history, which has nothing to do with this, because I got all C's my freshman year. So I graduate 3rd in my class in high school, go to Harvard, first semester, all C's. Big shock to the system. I'd taken all the wrong courses, like the history of Europe or something. It's way too much to learn. Economics 101. So I buckled down, and I said, I got to find an easy A. And there was this guy said, Chinese 101. It's a history of China. I went and took that course, got an A, and I fell in love with it. Later, I learned from a hypnotic age regression experience that I was a small village official in China in a past life. If you look around my house, there's a lot of Asian furniture and stuff, art. And so I majored in rugby and girls, really what happened when I was in college. And
man.
That's right. I had a lot of fun. But my senior year, my roommate said, you want another easy A? And I said, yeah. He said, there's this course called Social Relations 10, SOCREL 10. And it was basically an encounter group. People just sat around and talked about their feelings. And so I said, yeah, I'm up for an easy A. It was a psychology department program. And I went, wow, this is really cool. And I want to grow up and do psychology. And they said, you can't get into graduate school in psychology. You've had no experience. You have one course,
Right.
And they said, but you could go into education. You could teach history. And then you can kind of slowly get into ed psych and then maybe psychology.
And you did, right? You were a high school teacher for
I was a high school teacher in the inner city of Chicago. I went to Jesse Jackson's church. I marched with Martin Luther King. I got very involved in civil rights movement. But what was fascinating for me was when I was teaching, it was an all-black school, and I realized they needed African-American history to help develop their self-esteem because that wasn't being taught. And so I taught that. And I began to realize about halfway through the first semester, these kids didn't believe in themselves. Their self-esteem was in the toilet. They'd never seen anyone from their neighborhood succeed, become entrepreneur. So I started bringing in articles about, from Jet magazine and other black magazines about people who'd made it. Mm-hmm. And I started studying self-esteem. And I took a course at a place called the Jesse W. Clement and Jesse V. Stone Foundation. W. Clement Stone was a friend of Napoleon Hill. They co-authored a book together. Think and Grow Rich was Napoleon's. They did a book called The Success System It Never Fails. And I started learning these things and applying them in my class. So half my class was like psychological education, self-esteem. My kids all started doing really well. The school system said, would you teach other teachers to do this? I said, yes. So I became a teacher trainer. But, and I was living on, when I was in graduate school at USC during this period to learn how to be a teacher, I was living on $120 every 2 weeks. That was my salary for part-time teaching. My rent was $79. So I had $41 to live on, or whatever, 51, whatever it is, do the math, for 2 weeks.
Jeez.
So I'm eating what I called my 21-cent dinners, which was tomato paste, garlic salt, water, and spaghetti noodles. Today it'd be the ramen diet, which the kids do at school.
Right.
But so, you know, those weren't easy times. You know, and I've gone through a divorce. That wasn't easy, you know. So I've had challenges.
So the kind of accompanying that, and I hope you don't mind me asking this question. So as a kid, when all that stuff's going on, that's a level of trauma, I would assume, right?
Yes.
Okay, so my kind of question to you is, Brad was talking about triggers, and we were talking personally about some different stories and stuff like that. And the triggers, he had mentioned that's what you use, the word you use to something that happened in the past, and now it's being triggered by another event or
exactly, being stimulated, re-stimulated. Yeah.
How did, obviously, being with that trauma doesn't go away. It's already happened. It's there.
Right.
Have you had any of those triggers? You know, in those early years.
Oh yeah.
Then learn to deal with them. And personally, like my family struggles with this, and I constantly trying to give them things to read and certain things. And I might be going a little bit too personal for my family, but at the same time, I see people that are they need help. They need to feel that love again. Yeah. And this trauma, whatever it is, that, you know, not to get this specific, but some really gnarly things have happened in our family, and little things trigger that response of that major deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, did you have to deal with those traumas and coming back to you?
First of all, the triggers are a gift because they're telling you there's still something in there that's not healed. So otherwise it would be underground and subtly sabotaging you. So when you have a trigger, it's called, oh, I'm triggered by that. So once you become aware of that, then it's called, now what do I want to do with it? And there's all kinds of things you can do. I did therapy for a number of years. I took a lot of personal development trainings. I learned to meditate. Lately, I would say things like tapping are really valuable. I've had people that were sexually abused consistently in childhood, and just with tapping, EFT tapping on these acupuncture points, as you think about the emotional experience, have had healings occur. That doesn't always occur. But the point being, there's so much technology now that we can use to heal. There's EMDR, which is where you have this rhythm going back and forth, and you go back into the emotion, and then you heal it, you release it. There's plant medicine that we're now realizing a lot of what used to be considered bad drugs have use if they're done therapeutically in a therapeutic setting. You know, we still have a lot of cultural taboo against that from, you know, some of the older legislators and so forth. But I think that you've got to address it, you know. And I used to say therapy is not just for the mentally ill. It's for the walking neurotics, which we all are, you know. And so, or ambulatory neurotics would be a better way of saying it. And so for me, once I realized this was available, you know, I took advantage of it. I went to a bunch of weekend workshops and ran out of money, couldn't afford it. So I started a retreat center, which was the Holiday Inn, basically. Yeah. I would hire people to come in and do these trainings, and then I would pay them, and there'd be enough money that I could do it free.
Right.
And so that's how I started. Then eventually I bought a piece of property. We built some homes on it, not homes, but, you know, residential things where people could come and stay for the weekend. And I remember one year I did 37 weekend workshops in a row. I was in them, you know, and a lot of stuff comes up you don't want to look at. It's scary. My dad said to me, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to really cry about, because I was stimulating his uncried tears. And so it took me years to learn to cry. And people thought I was unfeeling. You know, I was kind of rationalizing, I'm just spiritually evolved. You know, these things don't bother me. But the real, I just was not okay to cry. Right. And then also the other thing he said when I went to college, he said, if you need a helping hand, look at the end of your own arm, which then I created this whole never ask for help. That really got in the way for a lot of years. And I had to let go of that one. So therapy, counseling, there's a lot of online techniques you can learn to do, meditation, plant medicine, so forth. So yeah, it's ongoing. I'll share this with you. I go to this place in Costa Rica and do plant medicine, done it now 3 years in a row for a week each time. And one of the shamans who runs that said that his teacher is now 98 years old, I think it was, and has been doing plant medicine once a month since he was 16. And he said every time he does it, something new comes up to deal with.
It's incredible.
That's crazy. I want to go through a couple of things that I think that was like my genius 5 minutes right there, is just listening to that. A trigger is a gift, meaning it moves from the unconscious to the conscious. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, absolutely.
So when a trigger comes up, then basically it's moving, I'm now aware of it, from an unconscious, which I don't know about, to now it's in my face, and I need to, but that is the gift, because now I can be aware of it. Number two, we're doing our weekend where you're going to speak with us in January, Martin Luther King weekend, because to me, he's the ultimate rebel. And he died for his cause. And even though they took his life, his legacy lives on. I think that's a really big word too. Like, what are you playing for? And a lot of people will say, well, this is what I'm playing for, and this is what it means to me. And he laid down his life for his belief. So to me, like, that's the ultimate rebel who says, this is what I'm for, this is what I'm against. And, you know, long after he has passed away, we still talk about him, have a weekend in his reverence. And to me, it's like, all right, that's a principled person. So we talk about the success principles. What is it to be a principled person? Well, a principled person says, I'm living this way, and I'm going to pull these things into my life, as opposed to always be chasing them. And I think there's a degree at which we all do that. But I really appreciate you being as open and honest. And I reassured Matt, I said, you could be vulnerable. You can ask him. And he lost a couple of his brothers, and one of them was murder. And if it's okay, these are some of the things that he's talking around. But I think it helps for you to know too. But maybe what I do is I add some of the tapping and things at the end of this video, because we had that from a previous workshop. I've seen you do that. I've been in Train the Trainer. I've done workshops with you. I really struggle to put a label when I introduce you. I just say he's my favorite author and my favorite speaker, because you have so much breadth and depth. It's not like swamp learning. Whenever people come to your workshops, it's not far and wide and 2 feet deep. Like, you go down the well. So for you to say I went to 37 weekends in a row, I'm not surprised. Like, we could pull up any topic and you would know about it. Hence the joke about Jose Canseco. That was good. Juiced.
I'm glad you said his last name, because I hope people won't be like, "Oh, this guy's."
We're gonna beep that out. All
oh my
this
gosh.
stuff. But and I have an axe to grind with big pharma. I'm just not a fan of it.
I'm not either, by the way.
No, and I love that about you. I just, father muckers. So the oxy epidemic and what they have done with that, 290 Americans died per day last year, and it got worse through the pandemic. It's the easiest drug for teenage kids to get, so it's the most abused drugs by American teenagers. 59% of oxy prescriptions were written initially for either neck or back pain, and then it got abused. They should have been sent to chiropractors. They should have been considered to do other things. So as long as we're talking about plant medicine, is it cool as we kind of wrap up this interview?
Sure.
Did you say, what is ayahuasca? Because I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. What is plant medicine? What are some of the non-pharma things? Because the reason it has a black label is not by accident. It's by design. It's because big pharma can't make it synthetically and profit off it. So they poo-poo anything, including marijuana back in the 1950s and the whole Mary Jane ads. It was because they couldn't profit off of it. So if it's synthetic and they can make money, they put lobbyists in D.C., and that's what they do. But if they can't, they also paint it with a negative stroke. So if at any point this isn't something you want to share, we can edit out. But talk to me about some alternatives, because these are really important topics, I think, that people just don't know about.
Well, we're finding now too, psilocybin used correctly for PTSD is powerful. LSD used therapeutically, again, under supervision, powerful. Ayahuasca is been used for over 2,000 years in the rainforests in Mexico and the northern part of South America. Amazon, all that area. And I first did it in the Amazon in a tributary river called the Bastazi with the Achuar. And it's something they do every month. And it the whole village does it. And it tunes you into a deeper place. I remember talking to some of the Achuar through a Spanish interpreter and saying, how did you know that when you take that tree and put a little X and that red stuff that comes out, it helps you not have the mosquito bite itch anymore? And they said, well, the plants tell us. And I'm going, really? It was like, so they're tuned into another level of awareness, that we all have capacity to do if we're not so busy, distracted with our Western lifestyle. But ayahuasca is a vine that grows. It's usually boiled, sometimes with the leaves, sometimes not. So there's different, what they call brews. The shamans have been doing this. They're very well trained for thousands and thousands of years. And it's part of their spiritual and the psychological healing and evolutionary process to participate in. And when it's done not for a thrill, but done for purpose of spiritual evolution, for healing trauma, etc., it's very, very, very powerful. My wife and I were talking literally last night. We went to see a movie called All Quiet on the Western Front, which is an amazing movie. It's the World War I from a German perspective, and it's a hard movie to watch because there's so much death and destruction that's unnecessary based on human ego. But we were talking with the composer who was there afterwards, because it was one of these directors there, the composers there, and we're talking about ayahuasca. My wife says, she's done everything, literally every kind of therapy you can think of. And she said, ayahuasca is the best therapy there is on the planet. Now, there are some contraindications for certain people that have maybe heart arrhythmia or, certain issues that, and if it's done responsibly, as it does in Rhythmia, where I go in Costa Rica, you're tested for all that. And they don't even let women on their period do it. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but that's part of the tradition. So the reality is, I've been there. I've done now 15 ayahuasca journeys in the last 3 years, for every time I go there. And it's been so transformational for me. I've given up so many of my limiting beliefs. I've healed my wounds. And I've done a lot of work already. That's the amazing thing.
Clearly,
I worked on myself for 50 years. But we call it's either the medicine or Mother Ayahuasca, and she doesn't screw around. She is tough love. Yeah. And you get to look at things you don't particularly want to see, but you get to see them and release them. Right. And that's the cool part. Most Americans, North Americans, will never, ever reach the level of full potential they have without doing something equivalent to this. And there are other things, meditation techniques and things like that, but this is fast, it's powerful, and it's loving. You feel the love. Even when you're looking at hard stuff, it's like your mother saying, look, kid, it's not okay to steal stuff from your grandmother's purse. It's not going to be a good thing for you to do all your life.
Why'd you say that looking at me? How'd you know? I love your honesty with it, because you are probably the number one person who's done the work, and has done the journey and self-improvement. And again, I struggle with the labels thing, but it's like self-improvement is a big part of what you do. And to just say, hey, look, there's other things to look at or to consider, I think is huge, and a shaman is basically a medicine man. It's a controlled thing that's been passed on for centuries. This isn't experimental. This is just poo-pooed by big pharma.
Well, I can tell you there's a ton of movie stars that I can't name because they don't want to be named. But Martin Luther King III goes down there regularly. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. There's just a number of people. And what happens is every week, except for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, like Christmas, that kind of thing, they have about 80 beds down there that you can go and participate. And once a year, I take people there.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because part of what Matt and I want to do too is help the people we're interviewing. And while you have a long list of accolades, what do you have coming up, and what are some of the things that maybe people can hook up with you on?
Well, one of the things I mentioned, I now take a group, or I'm the attraction, if you will, to bring people for 1 week to Rhythmia, and I get paid by getting to be there for free. That's basically the way it works, and participate in all the activities.
It's a free trip
for me. I mean, they pay my airfare and everything.
Yeah,
and it's all.
But I meant free trip.
Oh, it's a free trip. You're playing on the word trip. Okay, I get it. I need more cleansing. So anyway. But what happens is that it's organic food. It's you get the massage, you get the colonic, there's yoga every day, there's meditation every day. It's just an amazing It's a healthy experience. So it's really a healing center. The other thing we're doing, if you go to jackcanfield.com, we have a bunch of online trainings we do. The pandemic came along, and all of a sudden our response was we can't do live trainings. So we switched to online. So we have a Breakthrough to Success online program we do live. We have a Breakthrough to Success online kind of click to buy that's already recorded.
Yep.
We have coaching programs we do. Right now we're doing one called the Game Changer program. We have something called Reignite Your Life. We have another one called the Momentum Mastermind Group. So we're supporting people at different stages of their experience with us. So there's a path you can take, if you will. But the stories are phenomenal. People double, triple, quadruple their income. They lose 50 pounds. They start businesses. They heal relationships. They let go of health issues. They disappear. They, whatever. Because we're dealing not just with like, okay, you need to set goals and do affirmations, but like, what are the internal limiting beliefs that are blocking you that you don't even know you have, and sometimes we'll do a half-hour exercise and someone will go, that was worth $100,000, just that one exercise. So we're into experiential education, experience something that's transformational rather than just talking at you, because there's enough talking on YouTube and TED Talks and all that.
Back to the phones, right? Just more noise.
Yeah, more noise.
Yep. So Breakthrough to Success, I've done that live. I've seen that online. The coaching stuff you do on live is phenomenal. Train the Trainer, I've done that. So just some awesome programs. JackCanfield.com is where you do that. I took one of your programs 19 years ago, and I'm a product of the product. That really, I just took good notes. I listened intently and applied a work ethic. And now we've built a multi-million-dollar chiropractic consulting group, and that honestly came from when you got on stage. It was an event where there was multiple people, but you were my guy, if that makes sense. And you just stood on stage and you didn't move much and you didn't have props and you just spoke, and I went, that's it. and the truth was, there was a little frustration going into it for me because I wasn't reaching enough people fast enough. I was seeing a lot of the prescription drugs and medications that I'm adamantly against and didn't agree with. And there is a chiropractic solution for this and for that, and why the addiction and all these things. And I was still young in practice. Maybe I was 30 years old. But I heard you speak, and it was something about being a speaker and a presenter. And you said certain things that still I reteach, but things like, your network is your net worth, and grow your impact and do things for the right reasons, and it'll come back. And so I started speaking on other stages and for state associations and built a multi-million-dollar business now that I enjoy with my family. We travel the world, and I speak on 4 continents from one weekend with you. And so anytime I see your stuff, or anytime we have a chance to do this, just so you know, you have made a huge impact in my life, and I'm greatly, greatly in your debt. And anything I can do for you or promote you in any way, you don't ask enough, but I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much, and appreciate getting to know you today, Matt.
Thank you. Just having some time with you opened my eyes up to a lot of different things, and I want to say thank you for having us here and taking the time. It really was an amazing session. Yeah.
And I'll say one last thing to you. You several times you said, I don't want to get too personal. One of the things I've learned is whatever is the most personal is the most universal. So if you really want to connect to people, the more personal you get, the more universal you are.
I feel sometimes when I open up with my personal, I don't want to bring people into this, like that trauma. I've had all 3 of my brothers pass, and so I'm guarded with the other person. I don't want them to feel like, oh, here's my laundry, here, take it. So sometimes I feel like I need to give that
I had to give permission to be vulnerable today. I said, Jack's the guy. You got to do it.
I didn't say much today, but man, I took in so much information. You're leaving me thirsty for more, and I wanna.
Well, you say a lot with your face.
Really?
Yeah, you're radiant. You're so radiant and so beaming with love and joy and presence.
Well, that's the message that I keep hearing. The common thread here is that love. And I told Brad, I started with the chicken soup because I wanted to, and then I realized, hey, you got 250 titles here. There's no way I'm absorbing half of this stuff before I meet this guy. And I hear this story about a daughter's love, a father's love, early in the chicken soup book. And man, I am weeping. I'm weeping, and by myself in my kitchen making dinner and stuff like that. And part of that is like, I want my daughters to feel that love when I'm going to expire, And I don't know, it makes me feel so good, but at the same time, there's that element of like, I don't want to leave my kids. I don't want to leave this world. I haven't done enough yet. I haven't reached my potential yet. And so when you start talking about these therapies and different things that you can help yourself get to these other potentials, it wakes me up again. There's new life inside me.
Well, a famous teacher named Ram Dass once said, the best thing you can do for your children is work on yourself.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
That's some of the times I browbeat myself. Even last night I was telling Brad, just got a little frustrating at the house yesterday. Everybody was tired and all this stuff. And I always, when those situations happen, I always feel miserable going to bed. And regardless if the issues are solved, I just feel like I don't want my kids to think I'm that guy, I want them to, that's daddy. And every day I come walking in the door, that's the greatest feeling. Daddy, it's just, it makes me feel so good. So, I love that quote, and that's something I'm going to take away from today. I'm going to continue to work on myself. And I have, I guess to a limited extent, but I think that would do my family, my kids, my wife, everybody around me, just by improving myself little by little and not expecting the finished product tomorrow when I wake up.
Absolutely. Not possible anyway.
Right.
And that which is personal is universal. That was my big one in the last 5 minutes, but that's huge. I love you like a brother, my man. That's why I wanted you to do this with you. It's just super fun. And Jack, I love you too, man. This has been nothing but insightful, exciting, and I pumped it up big time to Matt, and you always exceed expectations. So I'm excited to hear you talk again in January for us. And thank you for having us in your home and for doing this. You are phenomenal. And I know you get a lot of those things, but you changed my life. 19 years ago, I was one of those many faces in the crowd, and that's why I keep coming back for more. You are the well, and thanks for filling us up, buddy.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
So there you saw it, Jack Canfield in his home, super open, super giving with his information. There's no reluctance on any particular topic. He's just authentic. And I would love to tell you that's because he's nearing 80 years of age, that he's let go of any restrictions. He's lived uninhibited his whole life. He's shared without any reservations, and how he teaches and gives is from abundance, which is probably why he lives in abundance. It was about a 10-acre home up in Santa Barbara, horses on his property in a corral with the barn, beautiful pool, wife, amazing team around him. Jack just has this magic touch, and it's why I'll always go to visit him, and every opportunity I'll sit down and interview him. He's a friend, he's a mentor, and he's someone I think you should look up beyond this interview. Check out some of his workshops, do any of his breakthrough programs. Anything he does online is just as valuable if you go in person. But if you ever do get to meet him, there's no person like Jack Canfield. Holds a special place in my heart. He's absolute magic. What the guy shares for human development is gold, and the place he comes from is pure intention. So I encourage you, check out anything he's written, any workshop he hosts, and any opportunity to be with truly the wizard. Jack is a phenomenal guy, and I think he can elevate your life no matter where you are. He just has something that I've never seen in anyone else. Very, very special man, and privileged to sit with him. So as part of my audience, if you enjoyed it as much as we did, we do appreciate when you subscribe, when you follow. But maybe most importantly, drop us some 5-star reviews, and any positive comments will be shown to Jack. So if you have appreciation for how he shared, please leave Jack a positive comment. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Glow DC. We have other podcasts that I know you'll enjoy, and if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you won't miss when these valuable episodes drop. Of course, we always appreciate a 5-star review, because that's how other people decide if they're going to give this a listen. And as I mentioned before, when you drop a comment, I'm going to screenshot it and send it over to Jack. Just re-encourage him with the positivity that he puts out. I want to make sure the positivity comes back. Like, subscribe, and share as often as you like. Jack Canfield's a magical guy, and I hope you got so much out of this. Cheers.